Have you ever stopped to think why some men get everything they want in life, while others always stay in the same place? The difference isn't in money, looks, or luck. It's in the words that come out of their mouths. What I'm going to show you now are 7 things an intelligent man never says, and if you've said at least 3 of these phrases, you need to change that today if you want to be respected and successful. You know that feeling when you say something and you notice people look at you differently, or when you notice that after certain conversations, opportunities just disappear from your life. Well, that's no coincidence. The words that come out of your mouth are like a business card that reveals exactly who you are on the inside. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, have you ever regretted something you said? Because I'm sure that by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why that hurt you so much. First thing an intelligent man never says, I don't know how to do that. Have you ever been in a situation where someone asked you to do something new, and the first thing that came out of your mouth was, I don't know how to do that? If you're one of those people who always starts with that phrase, be careful, because that's already a strong sign that you're sabotaging your own opportunities, and I'll explain why. When a man says, I don't know how to do that, as a first reaction, he's not just being honest about his limitations. He's showing a fixed mindset, a resistance to learning, and even worse, a lack of initiative that makes people around him lose confidence in him. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone get a promotion, an important project, or even win over a woman simply because when they were asked if they knew how to do something, they answered, I'll figure out how to do it. The difference between these 2 answers might seem small, but it determines who grows in life and who gets left behind. The intelligent man knows that every skill can be learned. He understands that when someone offers you an opportunity, it's not necessarily because you already know everything, but because they see potential in you. And when you answer, I don't know how to do that, you're basically saying, I don't believe in my own potential. Have you heard that story about the guy who got a job that required knowledge he didn't have? When they asked how he would handle it, he answered, the same way I learned everything I know up to now, by studying and practicing. 6 months later, he was promoted. That's emotional and strategic intelligence working in practice. But why does this happen? Because when you say, I don't know how to do that, you're ending a conversation before it even starts. You're telling the person that they need to look for another solution, another path, another person. And guess what? They'll do exactly that. If this has ever happened to you, leave a comment sharing how you overcame that mindset and help more people who are going through the same situation. Second thing, an intelligent man never says, it's not my problem. You know when you're at work and a problem comes up that technically isn't part of your responsibilities, and you drop that phrase that seems to protect you but actually destroys you. It's not my problem. If you've ever said this, especially in public, you need to understand the damage this phrase causes to your reputation. This phrase is like a slow-acting poison. At the moment, it seems like you're protecting yourself, setting boundaries, showing that you know your responsibilities. But what you're really doing is sending a clear message to everyone around you. I only do the bare minimum, and don't count on me when you need someone proactive. The difference between an average man and an intelligent man is that the intelligent man understands that everything in a company, a family, or a relationship is in some way everyone's problem. He knows that when you position yourself as someone who solves problems instead of someone who runs from them, people naturally start to see you as a leader. You've probably known that co-worker who, whenever a crisis popped up, even if it wasn't in his department, would roll up his sleeves and help fix it. And you probably noticed that he got promoted faster, had more opportunities, and people always spoke well of him behind his back. That's not luck, it's strategy. That weird feeling you get when you see someone getting ahead in life faster than you, even though you both started in the same place. Often that's exactly it. While you were saying, that's not my problem, he was saying, let me see how I can help. The intelligent man knows that every problem he helps solve is an opportunity to show his value, to learn something new, to build stronger relationships. He understands that the person who solves other people's problems never runs out of opportunities. But hold on. This doesn't mean you should become a doormat or accept everything. There's a difference between being proactive and being exploited. The intelligent man knows how to help strategically, in a way that builds his reputation without overloading him. Why does this work? Because leadership isn't a title, it's an attitude, and when you show that you care about the success of the whole group, people naturally start to see you as someone reliable enough to lead projects, teams, and important situations. The third thing, an intelligent man never says, "I've always done it this way." Are you one of those people who, when someone suggests a different way of doing something, your first reaction is, "I've always done it this way and it works"? If you've ever heard those words come out of your own mouth, be careful, because you might be sabotaging yourself without realizing it. That phrase is one of the biggest signs of a rigid mindset out there. When you say that, you're showing everyone that you've stopped learning, stopped growing, stopped adapting. And in a world that's constantly changing, that's practically a professional and personal death sentence. You know that feeling when you realize things around you are evolving, but you keep doing everything the same old way? Yeah, that's not normal, and I'll explain why it's hurting you so much. The intelligent man understands that always doing it this way might have worked in the past, but the past doesn't determine the future. He knows that being open to new ways of doing things isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of adaptive intelligence. You've probably known that guy who insisted on using old methods while everyone around him was evolving. You likely saw him get left behind, miss opportunities, and struggle to connect with younger people. What I'm about to say will make you think of someone. Stubbornness disguised as experience is one of the fastest ways to become irrelevant. Everyone pretends not to notice, but when someone always answers with, "I've always done it this way," people stop bringing new ideas to that person. They stop including him in important discussions. They stop seeing him as someone who can contribute to innovation. And if you thought that one was tough, just wait for the next one, because the fourth thing is something that might be destroying your relationships without you even realizing it. That time you felt left out of important conversations at work, or when you noticed people stopped asking for your opinion on new things. Often that happens because you positioned yourself as someone resistant to change. The intelligent man knows that experience is valuable, but only when combined with an openness to evolution. He uses his experience as a foundation, not as a prison. When someone suggests something new, instead of saying, "I always do it this way," he says, "Interesting. In my experience, doing X worked well, but let's see how we can combine that with your idea." Why does this happen? Because the human brain has a natural tendency to resist what is new and different. But intelligence lies precisely in being able to overcome this natural tendency and remain open to continuous learning. Fourth thing. An intelligent man never says, "You're exaggerating." If you're one of those people whose first reaction when someone is telling you about a problem, a worry, or a difficulty is to say, "You're exaggerating," stop and think about the damage this phrase might be causing in your relationships. This is one of the most destructive phrases out there, especially in romantic, family, and close friendship relationships. When you say this, you're not just minimizing the person's problem. You're minimizing the person themselves, invalidating their feelings and showing a complete lack of emotional intelligence. Have you ever had that feeling that something wasn't right, but when you tried to talk to someone, that person simply dismissed your feelings? Remember how you felt disrespected, misunderstood, even betrayed? Well, that's exactly what happens when you tell someone they're exaggerating. The intelligent man understands that people's feelings are always valid, even if he doesn't agree with the situation that caused them. He knows that when someone is sharing something that bothers them, they aren't necessarily asking him to solve the problem, but rather for him to listen and validate the experience. You know when you notice that after certain conversations, people start to pull away from you? Often, it's exactly because of this phrase. When you invalidate someone's feelings, that person learns they can't count on you for emotional support. And relationships without emotional support don't last. That moment when you realized your wife, girlfriend, or even close friends stopped sharing problems with you? It was probably after you used this phrase a few times. People simply learn that it's not worth opening up to someone who won't take them seriously. But why do men do this? Usually for two reasons. First, because they were taught from a young age to solve problems instead of just listening. Second, because they feel uncomfortable when they can't fix the situation, so they minimize the problem to reduce their own anxiety. The intelligent man knows that sometimes the best solution isn't to solve, it's to listen. He understands that when someone is opening up to you, they are giving you a gift, trust. And when you respond with, "You're exaggerating," you are throwing that gift in the trash. And if you think that one was hard to swallow, the next one will make you completely rethink how you communicate, because it's something most men say almost automatically. Fifth thing an intelligent man never says, "I was just kidding." Have you ever said something that hurt someone, and when the person showed they felt bad, your reaction was, "I was just kidding, you're the one who took it seriously"? If this phrase has ever left your mouth, especially after seeing that you hurt someone, you need to understand how much this is harming your credibility and your relationships. This is one of the most cowardly ways to try to escape responsibility for your own words. When you say something that hurts someone and then say, "I was just kidding," you aren't minimizing what you said, you are maximizing the damage. You are telling the person that on top of being hurt, they are also being too sensitive. You know that situation where you made a joke about someone in public, the person got embarrassed, and instead of apologizing, you said it was just a joke. Everyone in the room noticed your lack of social intelligence in that moment, even if nobody said anything. The intelligent man understands that intention does not justify impact. He knows that if his words hurt someone, the fact that it was a joke doesn't lessen the pain caused. On the contrary, taking responsibility and apologizing when necessary is a sign of maturity and strength, not weakness. You've probably met that guy who was always making mean jokes, and whenever someone complained, he'd say it was just humor. You likely noticed that people started avoiding him, that he wasn't invited to certain meetings or events. What I'm about to say will make you remember a lot of people. Those who hide behind "it was just a joke" are actually showing that they don't have the courage to own their own words. That time you felt you were being excluded from some social or work groups. It might have been because you used that phrase when you should have apologized. People learn not to trust those who don't take responsibility for their own actions. But why is this phrase so destructive? Because it has a terrible underlying message. Your feelings don't matter, and if you got hurt, that's your problem for not understanding my humor. This destroys trust and intimacy in any relationship. The intelligent man knows that true humor brings people together. It doesn't separate them. He understands that if his joke hurts someone, the right response isn't to hide behind the intention, but to acknowledge the impact and act to fix the damage. So, are you starting to recognize yourself in some of these situations? Because the sixth thing I'm going to talk about now is something that might be undermining your authority without you realizing it. Sixth thing. An intelligent man never says, "It wasn't my fault." If you're one of those people whose first reaction whenever something goes wrong is to explain why it wasn't your fault, even before understanding what really happened, this attitude might be destroying your professional and personal reputation in ways you can't even imagine. This phrase is like a red alarm for everyone around you. When you use it, especially as your first reaction to a problem, you're showing that your priority isn't to resolve the situation, but to protect your own image. And this makes people lose trust in your leadership ability and sense of responsibility. Have you ever been in a meeting where something went wrong and that person immediately started explaining why they had nothing to do with the problem? Remember the awkward feeling that hung in the air? Everyone noticed that instead of focusing on the solution, they were focused on protecting themselves. The intelligent man understands that the first reaction to a problem should be, "How can we fix this?" and not, "It wasn't my fault." He knows that even when he really had no direct responsibility for the problem, taking a problem-solving stance instead of a defensive one makes him be seen as a leader. You know when you notice that certain people are never called for important projects or leadership positions? Often, it's because they've already demonstrated that, at the first sign of difficulty, they'll be more concerned with protecting themselves than with finding solutions. That strange feeling when you notice your boss or colleagues stop including you in important decisions. It might be because you've shown that your first concern in difficult situations is to absolve yourself of responsibility instead of helping to solve the problem. Everyone pretends not to notice, but when someone always says, "It wasn't my fault," people automatically start questioning whether that person has what it takes to handle greater responsibilities. After all, Who wants to give more responsibility to someone who avoids responsibility? But hold on, because the next point will shock you even more, because it's a phrase that most men use thinking they're being clever, but which actually reveals a small-minded mentality. The intelligent man knows that leadership is about taking responsibility, not avoiding it. Even when the problem really wasn't caused by him, he focuses on how he can contribute to the solution. He understands that people who solve problems move forward in life, and those who run from them stay in the same place. Why does this happen? Because when you always say, "It wasn't my fault," you're positioning yourself as someone who just completes tasks, never as someone who takes responsibility. And people who don't take responsibility don't get promoted, aren't respected, and aren't sought out when important opportunities arise. Seventh thing an intelligent man never says, "I already knew that." And we've arrived at the last thing an intelligent man never says, and it might be the most damaging of all to his credibility and relationships. I already knew that. If you have the habit of saying this whenever someone tells you something new or teaches you something, you need to stop today. This phrase is the calling card of insecurity disguised as intelligence. When you say, "I already knew that," you're not demonstrating knowledge. You're demonstrating a pathological need to seem like you're always one step ahead of everyone else. And this is perceived by everyone around you as pure insecurity. Have you ever had that experience of being excited to share something interesting you discovered, and the person just cut your excitement short with an, "I already knew that"? Remember how you felt small, disrespected, as if your discovery had no value? Well, that's exactly what you do to others when you use that phrase. The intelligent man understands that even when he actually already knows the information, there's a huge difference between demonstrating knowledge constructively and using knowledge as a weapon to belittle others. He knows that true intelligence isn't about proving that you know, but about making people feel good about sharing knowledge with you. You know, when you notice that people stop telling you interesting things, stop sharing discoveries, stop including you in conversations about new subjects? Often it's because you've demonstrated that you'll receive any information with, "I already knew that," making the person feel stupid for having tried to share. That moment when you noticed you were being left out of interesting conversations at work or among friends, it might be because you've built a reputation for being that person who always already knows everything. So why bother including them? Everyone pretends not to notice, but when someone always says, "I already knew that," people start avoiding them. Not because they actually know everything, but because interacting with them becomes unpleasant. Nobody likes to feel like they're talking to an arrogant encyclopedia. The truth is, even if you really did already know the information, there are much smarter ways to handle it. The intelligent man might say, "That's interesting. I had read something similar," or "True. And did you know that this also applies to," showing knowledge constructively instead of destructively. Why do we do this? Usually because of deep insecurity. We're afraid of seeming like we don't know enough, so we always try to prove we already know everything. But the effect is exactly the opposite. We seem insecure and arrogant at the same time. And if you recognized yourself in at least 3 of these situations, don't panic. The fact that you've made it this far in the video shows that you have the right mindset to change. Now pay attention, because I'm going to show you exactly what to do to transform these destructive habits into attitudes that will make people respect you and seek you out. And now what do I do? Now that you've identified how many of these phrases are part of your vocabulary, the burning question is, how do you change this in a practical way? It's no use knowing you have a problem if you don't know how to solve it, right? That's why I'm going to give you 7 practical actions you can start doing today to become a man that people respect and admire. Action 1. Replace. I don't know how to do that with "I'll figure out how to do it." What to do? Every time someone asks you to do something you don't completely master, instead of immediately saying no, say, "Let me see how I can make this happen," or "I'll figure out the best way to do it." How to do it. Practice this change starting with small, low-risk situations. When someone asks you about something you don't know, take a deep breath, count to 3 mentally, and rephrase your answer to focus on the solution instead of the limitation. Why it works. Because this simple language change completely shifts how your brain processes challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles, you start seeing learning opportunities, and the people around you start seeing you as proactive instead of reactive. A practical exercise you can do today: record an audio on your phone saying, "I'll figure out how to do this," 5 times with different intonations. Listen back and choose the version that sounds most natural and confident. This will program your brain to use this response automatically. Action 2. Transform "it's not my problem" into "how can I help?" What to do? When a situation arises that technically isn't your responsibility, instead of stepping away, ask how you can contribute to the solution, even in a small way. How to do it? Set a mental limit on the time you can dedicate to helping with problems that aren't yours, for example, 30 minutes per day. This way you help without overloading yourself, and your help is seen as genuine generosity, not an obligation. When to do it, especially in public situations where other people can observe your reaction. These are the moments that most build or destroy your professional reputation. Why it works? Because people who solve other people's problems never run out of opportunities. When you position yourself as a problem solver, you automatically position yourself as a leader, even without the formal title. Action 3. Change. I always do it this way. To "in my experience X works well, but let's see how to combine it with your idea." What to do? Use your experience as a starting point for the conversation, not as the final word. Show that you have knowledge, but are open to evolving that knowledge. How to do it? Practice the yes and technique instead of yes but. When someone suggests something new, always start with yes and we can also, instead of yes, but I always do. For whom? Especially important in work environments where innovation is valued, and in relationships where you want to show that you value the other person's opinion. Expected result: people will start to see you as experienced but flexible, which is the perfect combination for leadership and lasting relationships. Action 4. Replace "you're exaggerating" with "I can see this is bothering you a lot." What to do? Validate the person's feelings before trying to understand or resolve the situation. Show that you recognize they are going through something difficult, even if you don't fully understand the reason. How to do it? Use the empathetic repetition technique. Repeat what the person said in your own words, showing that you listened and understood. For example, "So you're feeling undervalued at work because your boss didn't acknowledge your project." When to use it, especially in intimate relationships, marriage, dating, family, close friends. These are the relationships where emotional validation is more important than practical solutions. Why it works? Because when you validate someone's feelings first, that person automatically becomes more open to hearing your suggestions later. Validation is like a key that unlocks the door to real communication. Action 5. Replace "I was just kidding" with "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you." What to do? When you realize something you said hurt someone, take responsibility immediately. Even if your intention was good, acknowledge the negative impact and apologize sincerely. How to do it? Practice the formula for an effective apology. "I'm sorry for saying X. I realize that hurt you. It wasn't my intention. And next time, I'll think more carefully before speaking." No justifications, no buts, just acknowledgement and a commitment to improve. Expected result: people will start trusting you more because they'll know you take responsibility for your actions. This builds deeper and longer-lasting relationships. An important exercise: the next time you make a joke and notice someone didn't like it, resist the urge to justify yourself. Just apologize and observe how the conversation dynamics change positively. Action 6. Change. It wasn't my fault to "how can we solve this?" What to do? Make the solution your first priority, not self-protection. Even when the problem really wasn't caused by you, focus on how you can contribute to solving it. How to do it? Practice the 10-second rule. When something goes wrong, count to 10 before saying anything. Use those 10 seconds to think about how you can help, not how you can protect yourself. For whom? especially important in the workplace, where your problem-solving ability determines your growth opportunities. Why it works? Because leaders are identified by how they react to crises. Those who focus on solutions instead of blame are automatically seen as leadership material. Action 7. Replace "I already knew that" with "That's interesting." And have you noticed how this also applies to what to do? Use your knowledge to enrich the conversation, not to end it. Show that you know the subject by adding useful information instead of just stating you already knew. How to do it? Practice the build-up technique. Whenever someone shares information, add something related that enriches everyone's knowledge. Be the person who makes conversations more interesting, not the one who kills them. When to do it? In all social interactions, especially when you want to be seen as someone who is both intelligent and pleasant to talk to. Expected result: people will start seeking you out for interesting conversations because they'll know you not only have knowledge, but know how to share it in a way that makes everyone feel smarter. Emergency action. If the situation is critical, do this immediately. If you've realized you've already missed opportunities or damaged relationships because of these phrases, do this today. Choose an important person in your life. It could be at work, in your family, or in your relationship, and have an honest conversation. Say something like, "I've been thinking about how I communicate, and I realized that sometimes I may have come across as defensive or closed off to new ideas. If that's ever happened between us, I want you to know I'm working on improving that. The next time you notice me acting that way, can you tell me directly?" This conversation will do 3 important things. First, it will show maturity and self-awareness. Second, it will give a second chance to relationships that may have been damaged. Third, you're going to create a feedback system that will help you identify when you're falling back into old habits. But remember, real change takes time. Don't expect to transform overnight. The important thing is to start today and be consistent. Every time you use one of the new phrases instead of the old ones, you're reprogramming your brain and building a new reputation. And here's an extra tip that can speed up this whole process. Start by paying attention to how men you admire communicate. Observe how they react to challenges, how they handle criticism, how they participate in conversations. You'll start to notice patterns that you can incorporate into your own communication. The truth is that intelligence isn't just about what you know. It's about how you communicate, how you react to difficult situations, how you make the people around you feel. And these 7 phrases that an intelligent man never says are windows into a more mature, more strategic, and more effective mindset. Now you have no more excuses. You know the pitfalls, and you know exactly how to avoid them. Starting today, your communication can be completely different if you put these changes into practice. And when you start to see people's positive reactions, more opportunities at work, deeper relationships, more respect and admiration, you'll realize that the change was worth every effort. Remember, you don't have to be perfect from day one. What matters is to start today and be a little bit better tomorrow. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice this new way of communicating. Every difficult situation is a chance to show off your new mindset. End. And if this video gave you the tools you needed to communicate more intelligently and strategically, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell notification because we have many other valuable tips to help you become the best version of yourself. In the comments, tell me, which of these phrases did you identify with the most? And if you've already started applying any of these changes, share the results with us to motivate other men who are on the same journey of growth.